Welcome, everyone, to the March 3rd meeting of the Abington Planning Board. Just going to call this meeting to order. Let's see, I guess we can do the minutes. You want to do, let's do the minutes of the February 3rd meeting. Has everyone had a chance to read them?
I did. I had one note, just trying to remember where I wrote it. Zoning Board Appeals agenda. This is the February 3rd, correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that Liz explained that the owner isn't storing it because it's a pre-existing non-conforming, but rather it was it was in violation of existing zoning and they were trying to legalize it.
Anybody else see anything that want corrected?
Motion to approve is amended.
A second?
Second.
Motion made, seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Let's see. Let's go into consider vote to release covenant on Shane Farm Path, Rockland Street. Mr. Riley?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the planning board, town planner and assistant town planner. I'm Sean P. Riley, 5 on Washington Street, representing Lee Mann, who's in the audience here with us tonight, who's the owner of the property. It's before you. If you recall, planning board previously approved a subdivision plan for Lee's property off of Rockland Street, where he presently lives. And the subdivision plan basically created 2 additional lots on this cul-de-sac with the intention that Lee's children were going to each build a house on the other 2 lots. For a long time, we thought one child was going to build, the other was going to hold off. It has now come to fruition that they both want to build. So in order to do that, we've applied for a release of the covenant, which now currently encumbers both of those 2 vacant lots. And in exchange, we would be filing one of 2 things, either a performance bond or a tri-party agreement for the $90,395. That dollar amount was basically put together by your review engineer. The town's review engineer went out and inspected all the work that's been done to date. He estimates that $90,395 should be retained or secured by the town if the covenant is to be released. The reason I say that I'm not sure if we're going with the bond or the tri-party agreement is that the bond company that Lee usually works has changed hands. So he still has contacts with it, but they weren't able to give him any information or
We're in the meeting.
yeah, or definitive costs. So hi Joe. So given the fact that you meet only once a month, my request was that the board approve the release of the covenant and that I submitted 2 forms of the release. One says in exchange for the delivery of a performance bond in that dollar amount, and the other one says in exchange for the delivery of a tri-party agreement. The thought being, if you'd sign both versions, and Liz would then retain them until Mr. and Mrs. Mann delivered either the performance bond or the tri-party agreement. That would be with Abington Bank. And then it would then be recorded at the registry of deeds. That would allow Lee's 2 children to then get their mortgages, their construction loan financing, and their building permits. If you have any questions, we're happy to answer.
Sean, we have these in the meeting packet.
Yes. And I brought 2 additional copies of it.
I have a question. It says lot 2 and 3, all lots in the roadway. I don't get the, in parentheses, the all lots.
As a conveyancer, when we're doing title searches, and you see a covenant recorded, and then you see these releases, you're always trying to put together, especially, more so in larger subdivisions when there's 16 lots, and you see a release of lot 1, 3, 7, and 5, and then you see another one with 11, 13, 14, and then you got to kind of piece it together to figure out when do I have them all released. So I like to do it whenever the final release is being recorded, I always put right on it, all lots being released. There are only 2 lots subject to the covenant, 2 and
Okay.
3.
I haven't seen that before, was why I'm questioning it.
That's just me being anal and helping future people who review the title to the property.
You're just being thorough as a.
Thorough is a better word, I suppose, yes.
Any other comment? Rick Collins, do you have any comments on this?
Yeah, the current status is that the access road is done, but it's not done up top, basically.
The top coat's not done, which you wouldn't do
Yeah.
until the foundation, the heavy trucks are out of there. And once their driveways are cut in, certain things will be finished. But the base coat's in, the drainage swales are in, the hydrant's in, the bulk of it's in, just everything that we could do before we start construction of the houses.
Is there a time frame for completion?
Is there a time frame? Do you know?
I want to get it done as soon as possible, like ASAP.
Lee is answering for the viewers at home. As soon as possible, his kids are both kind of doing their own projects. So if they were to move forward, just the loan process itself is going to be 2 months, and then getting a contract lined up, and then house construction is usually anywhere from, nowadays, 4 to 6 months. So within the year.
I was gonna say, you're probably looking at least a year.
Yeah. And just one other thing, just to add, I also inserted, you see right in the middle, Lot 1, 140 Rockland Street, Lot 2, 138 Rockland Street, and 136 Rockland Street. Again, for future reference for people, because if you remember, this was originally Chain Farm Path. It was kind of a private road. Since that approval, and just a couple months ago, the fire department and the assessors, the fire department really wanted to have those houses assigned with Rockland Street addresses. So those are the addresses that were assigned, so I've added that. So that'll be also on record of the registry of deeds.
Rick Shepherd, I know you're looking at this, but do you have any comments?
So, does the prior naming convention persist? Chain Farm Path?
Yes, that's still the name of the subdivision. It's a
But
private.
it's not the name of the,
It's not their street addresses.
Right. He might put up, private way, Chain Farm Path, but it means nothing to the fire department and the assessors. The assessors are gonna call it, they'll be listed in the town records with those Rockland Street addresses.
And the post office goes by the assessor's address,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Since this is going to remain a private road, Bruce, maybe you can remind me, do we generally have a time frame for when the work needs to be done? I mean, usually the impetus is when it's accepted as a public way, that's when everything has to be done, but this is a different situation. So, I mean, I assume we don't want this to linger for 5, 7, 8 years. At what point do we need?
You can certainly give us a 2-year, whatever, like we said, we're trying to get it done within a year.
Well,
I don't want to hold the kids
we've
to
got
that.
one subdivision that's been going on since 2001 or 2.
Yeah.
Not that I think Lee's gonna wait
No.
that long, but
Would your,
Let me get it done, so that everything is done.
Mr. Mann, would you feel appropriate, would you feel amenable to us saying like it needs to be done in a couple of years?
Sure, that's fine.
And he can crack the whip with his kids.
I can crack the whip.
so you want us to make it less? So you can really crack
It's on
the whip?
TV.
it's not my fault. It's the planning board.
I've been waiting a little while for them to get going on it.
Right?
Like everybody else thinks the interest rates are gonna go down, and I don't think they're gonna go down that much, so it's only gotta get going, so.
June 30th, 27?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Sure.
I think it would be a good idea.
Yeah, no, we don't have a problem with that.
So 2 years, guys? All right,
Do you need me to, is that just going to be part of your vote?
yes.
Okay, I don't need to redo the
No, sir.
form.
We'll put it in a vote. Any other comments on this? All right, so do we have a motion to vote to release the covenant on Chain Park Path
Either
To release,
to release?
to release it. in
Release the
amount-
covenant, yes.
And for
yes.
surety in the amount of,
$90,395.
Which last year was up to almost 217, and I kept going, and so now all it is the top coat railing, the looms on site. So all it is looming the edges of the road and raising the casters, so.
and it's getting posted either by,
By a performance bond or by tri-party agreement.
okay.
So we've heard all the correct information. Make a motion to,
Make that motion.
someone second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Hi.
Thank you. I'll leave you these two if you can sign these tonight, and I'll pick them up. Well, Liz will hold them, actually.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Go on to the,
Right, so you're gonna do NAP.
yes.
That's right.
Okay. So I haven't noticed.
Give the hearing notice.
Oh, yes, I've got it. Okay. All right. I've got the hearing notices. Good. All right.
You're good to go.
Everybody ready? Public hearing notice. The Abington Planning Board will hold a public hearing at Abington Town Hall on Monday, March 3rd, 2025, at 6:05 PM on the application of Natural Agricultural Products LLC, 82 Bryan Drive, Brockton, Mass. 02301, to amend the special permit dated August 12th, 2021, to increase the store hours pursuant to zoning bylaw 175-24.3. The property is owned by Desir Netta, I'm sorry if I butchered that, LLC, 1437 Bedford Street, Abington, Mass. 02351. The property is located at 1437 Bedford Street on Assessor's Map 68, Lot 20. The application can be viewed at the town clerk's office. Bruce Hughes, Chair, February 17th and February 24th. Is anyone going to speak on this?
The applicants are over there, but
Yep.
if you'd like, I did receive that from the treasurer's office. There's no outstanding taxes. And I did receive this from Chief Bonnie. And he said, there's a meeting in the planning board on March 3rd. I received notice that Natural Agriculture Products are seeking to change their hours of operation. I have no objection to this change.
Okay. All right, welcome, hey.
How you doing, Bruce?
Good to see you.
Thank you very much for inviting me tonight.
Yes.
The reason for the extension of the hours is we lose an hour in the morning due to the fact that we have the first student buses coming in and out of the property between 9 and 10 in the morning. We found it to be a hazard for traffic, so therefore we don't open up till 10 o'clock in the morning. My colleagues in the industry are all opening up at 9, and I seem to be losing a little bit of that business, but it was suggested to me that I extend my hours in the evening because a lot of people work a different shift, and they don't get out of work till 8 to 10 o'clock at night. So that's why I request this extension of hours.
Liz, you have any comments on this?
Nope, that was it. That was all that we received.
Members, Bob, Rick, any comments?
I don't typically have any concerns. Curious as how things are going.
We're doing pretty well. We'll be celebrating our first year come this 15th of this month, and we're getting quite a good volume of people coming up the state highway. That's why it's advantageous to be on, have it open for that time. It was a request by our customers more than a request from us.
Well, Abington boards are happy to support successful business in town,
Yes, and
notwithstanding that I've known you for a long time.
and we were just honored by the Metro South Chamber of Commerce for their economic impact for the town of Abington through
Congratulations.
natural agricultural products. And I'm sorry for making it such a long name for you, Bruce. I meant to shout it out. NAP we go by.
Yes, sir.
I have no problem, I guess the one, hypothetically, if there were to be issues, I mean, there hasn't been.
Never, no.
But if there were to be issues, we find out just 11 o'clock isn't working, 10 o'clock might be a better time. Do we have a mechanism to kind of come back and say, let's revisit this?
I think if the police chief finds that they're up there too much,
Yeah,
then he'll reach out and say,
okay,
I mean, we would have to hold another special permit hearing
yeah, okay.
to walk that back, but I think obviously we'd try to work that out with you guys first.
Not
Well,
a
the police-
problem.
The police would try to work that out with you
Not a
guys
problem
first.
at all. I'm here to
Right?
work and collaborate with everybody.
So there haven't been any problems. Good.
Nope, the chief has no opposition.
No traffic problems, so.
Nope.
No, everybody's going 90 on Route 18, you know that,
Yeah, 4 lanes, yeah.
right?
Okay. Well, any further discussion?
No, I think the hours are essentially consistent with what other establishments have in place already.
Yes,
So what you're requesting isn't kind of out of the
it's not
norm.
out of the box at all, no.
Yeah,
I wouldn't request anything out of the box.
right,
And
right,
Like
right.
I say, I'm not here to compete, I'm here to collaborate. People in my industry need to know this, that they have to collaborate with each other in order to make it a successful industry. And I'm trying to get that known throughout the newcomers in the neighborhood.
You've come a long way. I think, didn't you propose to have something over at the old Rockton Soul and Plastics plant over in Rockton one time?
Yes, but that's politics, as you know, Bruce. They never intended to ever give me a building permit
No, boy. No.
after I spent a lot of money.
Well, we're happy to have you in Abington.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be
We
here.
like the, we
believe
like
me.
the, we like the money.
It isn't the money, it's the people here are very, very welcoming. And I've really enjoyed being here.
Can we get that on our website? Liz?
Yes, you can.
On our website?
People here are very, very welcoming.
Well, when we have the new economic development website,
It's
the
up.
boards are,
It's hidden. It's
boards
up.
are collaborative to support economic development. All right, well,
I'll make that
Yes.
motion to change the hours.
okay, someone want to second that, please?
Second?
Motion made and seconded to
All right,
change-
just for
whoops.
the clarification, I'm going to put in here that the hours are to expand hours Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 11 p.m., and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., right?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So that motion's been made?
Yep.
And seconded with the hours specified? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
all.
Congratulations on
Thank you
your
very
award,
much.
too. All right. We can do the correspondence, ZBA stuff.
You can do it after you can get right into
Yeah.
crazy town.
Okay. No Form A applications or,
No Form As.
okay. Let's update on town planner. You can do that thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
not much.
All right.
I'd like to,
I'll go right into 6:15. Yep. Public hearing to consider the full text of the proposed zoning amendment to the Town of Abington zoning bylaw. do I need to read all these?
I don't think so.
Okay. Mr. Riley,
It's
would you
posted.
like to speak on this?
Not till we get to it?
What?
All right, so,
this is you're on, Liz.
Mr. Chairman, so the first one, the board has, so there are the first three proposed zoning amendments were given to me by Marion Wong Ryan, who previously worked in the building department. And then number 4 is part 4 and 5 and 6 are all part of the ADU bylaw altogether. So we can start with the first one, which is the small-scale ground-mounted or small roof-mounted equipment, number 10, under the table of use regulations, section 17521 of our zoning bylaw. It's G10, actually. So the proposed zoning bylaw is to strike small-scale roof-mounted solar equipment and add small-scale ground-mounted or small-scale roof-mounted solar equipment. We had a suggestion when we had that working group, when we were working on the ADUs, that we make these two categories, so actually make it 10 and 11. So it would be small-scale ground-mounted solar equipment, and then there'd be number 11, which would be small roof-mounted solar equipment. That was said in front of town council, and she thought that was a good idea. So it'll be up to the board to vote that, if that's how they feel, but that was a suggestion that was made for this particular proposed zoning amendment.
I just have a question. Are we going to vote on these individually, or should we just vote once we've heard the
It's up to you, I think maybe as we go along.
Okay.
So, roof mounted makes sense because you're not disturbing anything new. It's sitting on something that already exists.
Mm-hmm.
For the ground mounted, any sort of setbacks apply?
That I'm not sure of.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it's a principal use, not an accessory use. It's under principal uses.
Oh, so this is somebody who had an empty lot and they're putting these on there?
I don't know. I mean, hold on, she literally, she handed them to me and then she left.
Mr. Riley?
Hi, Sean Riley. I'm here with my town moderator hat on and not as an advocate for or against, but I was at the same meeting that Liz was at, and the discussion was, and I think you bring up a great point that I don't think we contemplated, that I had looked at this, or town council and the working group had looked at this issue as, right now it just says section 10, small-scale roof-mounted solar equipment is allowed in every zoning district as of right. So if you want to put solar on your roof, you can do that, period. The proposal was to add small-scale ground-mounted solar equipment, and the thought was add that as line item 11 and have its own, whether you want to have it allowed as of right across the board or by special permit across the board or whatever you guys would suggest at town meeting. To answer your question about setbacks, I was envisioning that these small ground-mounted solar equipment where it's going to be something that someone would add in their backyard, so that would make it an accessory structure. But you are correct that if you had a vacant lot and you just wanted to fill it with ground-mounted solar, then it becomes a principal use. So now you have more restrictive setbacks. So if it's adding to someone's backyard where there already is a building, commercial or otherwise, commercial, residential, it's a 10-foot setback, it's an accessory structure. But if it's the only structure on the building, it's now the principal use, on the lot, it's now the principal use, now you'd have usually a 20-foot side yard setback, a 30-foot rear yard, things like that. So I think that was, the suggestion was to keep line 10 as it is, and then create a new 11 to address small-scale ground-mounted solar equipment with whatever use level you guys determine.
All right, so this is what she attached. And it's 17536, large-scale ground-mounted solar photovoltaic installations. And under zoning enforcement authority, section F, building permits and building inspections, smaller scale ground-mounted or small-scale roof-mounted solar equipment installations which are an accessory structure to an existing residential or non-residential use do not need to comply with this section, but shall conform to the table of use and shall require a building permit and shall comply with other provisions of the zoning bylaw as applicable.
All right. So by large scale, they're talking like a solar farm.
Right,
Yeah.
right, and this is
Or
small scale.
Like what they put on top of Cape Cod lumber.
Yes, yes, and I think this is very much meant as Sean described.
3 to 5 panels in a backyard.
Yep, on a roof or in the backyard.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think there's a kilowatt threshold between small and large.
I
thought
agree
you
with
said
you
it was a
too.
gig, but
No, it's like 24 megawatts, 25 megawatts, something like that. I had to do a lot of reading on it. All right, so I feel dumb for asking this. I assume we have another section on accessory uses, or is that just a definition?
Accessory use.
So do we have a
structures
table
is-
of use regulations for accessory uses?
No,
Okay.
it's,
Okay.
Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, it's 10 feet? Did we figure that out?
10 feet.
Accessory,
Accessory use,
there is another part of the zoning.
that speaks to,
There's another section of the bylaw, I want to say 175-26 maybe,
I think you're right, it's
for
accessory use structures.
which require a 10-foot setback from lot lines. And it must be in the side or rear yard. So you can't put an accessory structure in the front yard.
It's got to maintain the front yard setbacks.
Right. So theoretically, if you had a lot that was 200, 300 feet deep and the house was set back 200 feet, yes, you could put a tool shed and solar panels or whatever between the house and the street, but it can't be, usually has to be at least 40 feet from the street.
Well, that's interesting because I'm thinking of a couple of houses off like Hancock Street where they're set back, like you said, 200 feet. Plenty of room, it's not gonna bother anybody to have ground mounted, along the driveway or something.
Yeah, and it's,
But technically it'd be the front yard.
Right,
and it's hard to write a zoning bylaw because lots are all different. I mean, you could have a treed lot with a lot of privacy and buffers between you and your neighbors, and you could have an area where there's no trees. So it's, you almost have to take that out of the equation because you can't predict what they're gonna use. But this would, by creating line item 11 for ground-mounted, small scale, you can then say it's allowed by special permit, because now they have to come in front of you, or the zoning board, I guess it would be, to show where you're gonna put it, and so neighbors get notice and figure out, do you need fencing or no fencing, or shrubbery or no shrubbery, or whatever the permit granting authority determines.
Yeah. I'm reluctant to place any more hurdles.
So-
Getting it done, I'm just trying to think the best way, because the most common use of this is gonna be as an accessory use.
Yeah, I can't see someone putting a small scale on just an empty lot.
no, and it's 250
I mean, if someone has like a 2-acre property and like half of it is
kilowatt
technically a second.
for a large one.
That's what I'm trying to find it, yeah.
No, it is, I just looked at it.
Oh,
You're not
She did give me that.
What you're putting.
which I wish
Half a dozen or a
someone could
dozen.
tell me how many panels is that?
Right, that I do
6
not
or
know,
36?
That's subject to change, isn't it?
Yeah.
right?
Kind of depends on how efficient they are.
That's right.
Right.
I think the thought was, putting it on a roof is really not gonna be a concern to a neighbor and a butter, because it's not gonna affect anyone negatively. Some people might say aesthetically, if you can see it, but it's certainly not gonna be overhanging or blocking the sun and things like that. Putting something out in a backyard, again, depending on the neighborhood, if it's on a bunch of small lots, there might be an issue. Maybe it's a safety issue, maybe it's an aesthetic issue.
So I think her intent here, I don't want to speak for her, but I think her intent was that it doesn't, under the large-scale ground-mounted solar panels, it's just this little smaller-scale ground-mounted or small-scale roof-mounted solar equipment. So there's no real information that speaks to that right now. Shall conform to the table of use and shall require a building permit. So I think what she was trying to do was make it clear for both of those
I mean,
in the table of use.
can we add a note that says basically, for small scale ground mounted systems that are an accessory use, principal use regulations will apply? Or do you have to have a separate cutout for it?
Well, let me say it the opposite way. If you want to treat small ground-mounted solar panels the same as roof-mounted, then all you need to do is change what was originally proposed, and that's the name of line item 10. It's allowed across the board. If you think ground-mounted should be treated differently from roof-mounted, then you need to create line item 11 and decide what restrictions you want. I'm just looking at our current zoning bylaw for large solar panel equipment. There is specific setback regulations for those, and they are 50 feet from every lot line. Oh, where'd it just go? Duh, duh, duh. Here it is. Large-scale ground-mounted solar voltaic installations, front, side, and rear setback shall be at least 50 feet, provided, however, where the lot abuts a residential district or residential use, or is in a residential district, the setback shall be no less than 100 feet from lot lines. Every abutting property shall be visually screened, yada, yada, yada. Again, that's for the large-scale, 250,
And they're only allowed by right in industrial and by special permit in the MUPID and highway commercial. They're not allowed in any other district, the large scale.
so if you create line item 11, the board could recommend what, if it's a Y, an allowed use in certain districts, if it's a special permit in certain districts, and if it's a no in certain districts.
But I guess, do we need a separate entry somewhere if it's an accessory use?
I guess if it's an accessory use, should have just shut that. I think then we go to section 26.
So I think the bylaw that exists right now, 17536, says smaller scale ground mounted or smaller scale roof mounted installations which are an accessory structure to the existing residential or non-residential use.
Okay.
So I think that covers it in there,
Kinda spells it out.
these smaller,
What was it again?
it's 17536, section F, under building permits and building inspections, and it says smaller scale ground mounted or smaller scale roof mounted solar equipment installations which are an accessory structure to an existing residential or non-residential use do not need to comply with this section, and that section is the large
Okay.
solar panel section, but shall conform to the table of uses and shall require a building permit and shall comply with other provisions of this zoning bylaw as applicable. So it does say it's an accessory use, and I think what was missing is it said small-scale roof-mounted solar equipment in the table of use, but it says small-scale ground-mounted or roof-mounted in the bylaw. So I think her point was to get the ground-mounted in here. So there was something that spoke to it if you were looking. I mean, I think maybe when this was drafted, they were only doing roof, residential roof mounts and larger scale farms.
So it does say, that section F you just quoted,
Yeah,
says small-scale ground-mounted and small-scale roof-mounted do not have to abide by the 50-foot setbacks that I just
Right.
recited previously,
right, it's an accessory structure.
and is an accessory,
Installations which are an accessory structure to an existing residential or non-residential use.
right, so if there already is a principal building and these are being added, it's an accessory structure.
Yep.
It doesn't speak directly to Rick's point, where someone has a small lot and wants to put in a small ground mounted thing, what do you do now? I think, my interpretation, I'm not town council, it is found under, as you mentioned, principal uses. So now you're putting a new principal use on this lot, a ground-mounted solar array, and whatever that use says, is it yes, or a special permit, or no? In a principal use now, instead of an accessory use, which says an accessory building has to be 10 feet off the lot line, if it's a principal use, meaning there's nothing else on the lot, then you have to abide by whatever the regular setbacks are, the 20 feet, the 30 feet, the 40 feet.
That's why I'm thinking, is there, I don't know how formal we need to be if we wanted to say, small-scale ground-mounted, regardless of whether principal or accessory use shall follow whichever set of regulations. If that needs to be a note, if it needs to be a separate bylaw, if it needs to be a separate line, I guess, how do we?
So if you want to get that deep into it, I think we would have to hold this till next year, because none of that was advertised, so to speak.
Okay.
I think right now, section F kind of covers this, and the fact that it's in the principal uses.
How'd this come up?
This was Marion gave it to me. Or you could just pass it over and we can tackle this next year. It's completely up to you.
I think it's meant to stay as an accessory.
I agree with you, and I think what her intent, I don't want to try to
Just
read
trying
her
clear up
mind,
the two sections.
but I think her intent was to add the ground-mounted into the use table, because it wasn't there, it was only roof-mounted.
Which then created the question of, okay, but do you want ground mounted to be as of right in any backyard anywhere you want?
Or do you want to say yes, no, maybe?
Or do you,
Because
You
if you're
bring up
going
a lot
to
of
create
great
a new
questions.
line, right? If you're going to create a new line, you can say yes, no, maybe, under the uses, or special permit.
Special
They'd have
permit.
to go to
Yep,
the ZBA,
yep.
and they could ensure that it was being treated as an accessory structure, and we're meeting that 10-foot
Yep.
setback.
I like
Your
your earlier
earlier-
the special permit.
To your earlier point, I mean, a lot of aesthetics questions here, right?
yeah, and I
I mean,
think,
somebody is going to build themselves a ground use solar array
right,
right along the property line, then neighbors should know that.
Right, so you have
Neighbors
a
should have an
special permit
opportunity
hearing.
to voice an opinion about that.
exactly, and depending on the layout of the lots, you may say, hey, we'll give you the special permit, but we really want you to push it 20 feet away.
Right.
Or put up a fence.
Right.
Screening, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's a huge demand for ground-mounted solar right now, but it will
Not yet.
come. Yeah, it certainly will.
If
Roof
I had
mounted,
the
sure.
choice, I would rather have it on the ground than on my roof.
Yeah,
So, not to get too astray, why isn't this covered by the Dover Amendment? I thought utilities were kind of not something you zone. I thought that's changing, that's, clean energy is now,
I can't answer that.
I have no idea. I mean, that's a question for town council. I'm happy to ask her that.
yeah. The other piece, as I've come to learn, is there's going to be a whole new set of advisory guidelines coming down from the state about clean energy siting and permitting. So maybe it's better that we hold off.
So you want to pass over this one?
It's up to you guys.
Yeah, only because I think a lot's going to be changing between now and next April, or there's going to be some more suggestions coming from the state. So rather than go through this process and then have to potentially change it again,
Yeah.
why don't we just hold off?
So let me just read this, so the folks who don't know what we're passing over. It says amend 175-21-25, Table of Use Regulations, G10, from small-scale roof-mounted solar equipment to small-scale ground-mounted solar equipment or small-scale roof-mounted solar equipment. So, folks, this is what this discussion has been all about the past few minutes or so. And I guess it's the consensus of the board to pass over this at this particular time.
All right, so I need a motion.
You need a motion to pass over this?
So moved.
Recommend.
That would be your recommendation to town meeting.
Yep.
Recommendation of town meeting to pass over this. Rick, you've made that motion. Bob, second?
Yep.
Bob seconded? Okay, so we've had a motion to recommend the town meeting pass over this article. You seconded? All those in favor? Aye, okay. Let's,
All
so
right,
I'm going to read the next one.
zippity-doo-dah. Okay, so the second one
Yeah.
is to amend 17529 dimensional and density regulations by adding note 16. Quote, proposed structures will need to be a minimum of 10 feet from any type of easement. Again, this suggestion came from Marion out of the building department. Since that time, the new building inspector, Nick Jenks, has looked at this and would ask the board to pass over. He's not in favor of this change.
I think that was town council's thought too, the meeting we had.
Why was the thought to pass over?
That's what he asked.
But any sense of why? Just it's too much, unsure how it's going to impact things?
It's too much, I think, that you can't put permanent structures in easements, and that the easements are usually wide enough to if you need to get in there and do something like, say, the DPW needed to go in and clean a catch basin, that the 20 or 30 feet, that whatever's on the plan that the board approved
Yeah.
is wide enough to get to where they need to get to do the,
Okay.
or if there's a pipe in the middle of the ground, it's in the middle of the easement, it's not.
Mr. Riley? would you
Sean Riley,
comment?
271 Dorsey Street.
Yes.
Again, just share information because we was at that same meeting. I think the concern was that this was further restricting the use of private property. It's not against the law to build on an easement. So there's a lot of different types of easement. The most common one is a utility easement. When you go up and down the streets to see telephone poles, those telephone poles are usually in the first 10 feet of the front yard of every lot you see. And if you see underground drain pipes, water, sewer pipes, they're usually going right along the lot lines. Since you can't build a house within 20 feet of a lot line, they usually run utility pipes where necessary down the lot line in that same area. That doesn't mean you can't put a fence along your property line, which may cross over the easement. You could put a tool shed over there with the understanding that if there is an underground pipe and if there is an easement there and it has to be repaired in the future, you need to take your fence down or move your tool shed so that the utility company or whoever owns the easement has a right to go in there and repair. In reality, most water, sewer, drain pipes especially, they're not pressurized, so they usually last for decades, and there's no need to get into someone's yard to maintain. Gas lines are different, you'd never want to put anything on top of that. But this was saying, so if you had a 10-foot easement on your side yard, it's now saying, make it 20. You got to stay 10 feet away from that, from any sort of structure, and it just seemed like an overreach was the discussion being held with town council. That's,
Thank you for your
again,
comment.
it's not arguing for or against, but that was the discussion.
Well, we appreciate your comment. So, having heard this, someone want to make a motion to pass?
Pass
Accept
over
the
it.
recommendation, pass over? Bob, you made it?
Second?
Motion made, seconded?
Aye.
All those in favor of recommending the town meeting pass this article over?
Aye.
So voted.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, the third one that we received was to amend section 17521, table of use regulations, residential uses A2, A1, two-family or duplex dwelling on a separate lot will be changed from special permit to yes in the TC zoning district. And this is apparently to correct the language in the zoning bylaw already says that it's allowed by right. So this is just marrying those two together so they both say the same thing.
The part that was throwing me off was on a separate lot. Can you just explain to me? I'm having a brain block about,
I think that's because that's what it says, one two-family or one duplex dwelling on a separate lot. That's under principal uses, that's what it says.
so it's not, I'm just thinking, okay, it's,
That's what currently exists in the zoning bylaw.
no, it's more, I have an empty lot. Is this about if I want to build a duplex on an empty lot?
I don't know, because I don't know, it's, do you have your zoning book with you?
Yes, I do.
Oh, you know what, I know she gave it to me, sorry.
I always bring my zoning book.
Right? So,
Or is this, I have a property, I have a house on the property is actually two separate lots?
so, under transitional commercial district, under uses, one and/or two-family dwellings on existing lots or new lots that comply with the dimensional requirements of 175. So I think it allows it by right in transitional commercial.
Okay.
And she did a ton of research. And I think actually, Attorney Riley, this is what we're going to call the Sean Riley Amendment, much like the Dover Amendment. This came up.
I noticed the discrepancy.
You noticed the discrepancy.
Is it going to be set on town meeting floor?
No, all right, so it used to be a Y. And then in some place it changed. That I don't think we have a record of it being voted as changed, right? Okay, yep. So we're just fixing something that,
I think, Rick, to your question, the phrase "on a single lot" or a separate lot, is what it says? On a separate lot.
On
It's
a
the-
separate lot.
It's the same thing under one, detached, for a single family, detached dwelling on a separate lot.
occupied by not more
It's
than one
basically, I
family.
think, just kind of reinforcing that we're not, this doesn't mean you can put more than one duplex on a lot. You have to have separate lots, and that lot obviously has to conform to whatever lot size and dimensions setbacks are. If you're gonna put more than one duplex on a lot, now you're talking condominiums, that's a whole different bylaw, go to a different section, basically.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you for the clarification, appreciate it. Rick, Bob, Rick, any comments?
Motion to recommend?
Motion made to recommend this article for town meeting vote.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank
So
you.
going to move on to the fourth one now.
Yep. So the next three are all part of the ADU proposed change. So as everyone is aware, the legislature adopted the Affordable Homes Act, an accessory dwelling unit bylaw. They're called protected accessory dwelling units. That state law went into effect on February 2nd. This is the first opportunity we're going to have to try to put what small protections we can in to our zoning bylaw. So we had a working group, we met twice. Town council was present, both, several of you guys were present, several zoning board members attended the meeting, fire department, assessor's office, town moderator was here. So we crafted the bylaw, which is attached at the back, the last version of this. And to go with that, we are going to repeal under residential uses in section 17521, accessory apartments. We're just going to repeal the whole line and take it out because that's being replaced with the protected accessory dwelling units. And then we're changing some of the uses in certain zoning districts from special permit to no. And specifically, the residential is all yes. General commercial was no. Highway commercial, we're to change that from a special permit to a no. Industrial was a no. Business development was already a no. FW, we're changing that from a SP to a no. No, we're not. Floodplain, we're not doing that, sorry. We need to change that and leave it as a special permit because that's the floodplains wetland protection district. And then the central business district, we're changing that from a special permit to a no. And then in the MUPDD, we're changing that from a special permit to a no. Transitional commercial will stay yes, and transit-oriented will stay no. So those are the changes to the table of use regulations that are reflected in the proposed zoning bylaw for the ADU, protected use ADU. Just to also let you know, I believe we've received 3 building permit applications for protected use ADUs.
Why did we decide these 4 should be no's instead of special permits now?
It was about the getting a residential use in a non-residential, non-primary residential district. So the central business district is supposed to be a mixed use. It's not supposed to have residential use as a primary. That's the special permit you guys can give, or could.
So now if someone wants to come in with 100% residential in a central business district, it requires a
A
variance.
variance.
Okay.
No.
Only for a.
Only for,
single-family house.
yeah, only for a single-family house, and then it would be a special permit for the,
Okay.
it would be a variance for the ADU.
Yeah, I think one of the issues that was trying to be addressed here was the goal of the town of not increasing, not allowing ADUs in what were intended to be commercial districts. Because otherwise, if you had an existing multifamily in highway commercial zone, you would be allowed to put an ADU out in the backyard. That might not be right.
Well, I think they still can if they have an existing non-conforming use, because there's a residential use there.
Right.
They can put the ADU there. But if there's nothing, if it's a vacant lot.
Yes.
We're saying no to the residential use in a commercial district, they would have to get a variance with the single-family home, and then they would have to get a special permit to put the ADU on the same property.
So for an FW district, which goes,
That's floodplain, we're gonna just leave that as special permit.
okay,
So that won't be enough.
That won't be a no, it'll be special permit.
Right. Can I ask, so it's my understanding that even though your agenda lists, what you're discussing is items 4 and 5, you're gonna have it as one combined article, so you can show it on this chart, which I think is a good idea,
You mean at town meeting?
at town meeting.
Sure.
You know, 'cause like this handout that you have addresses both the deletion of 1A and then the update of 1.
Yeah, so that would be my intent.
I think that's, will
to move
make more
forward
sense
and
for
put
people.
Those three together, yeah.
Yeah. So that'd be, so we would combine those, what's on your
The
list.
two changes to the
Yeah.
table of use regulations, and then the bylaw itself.
Right, so, well, number 4 and 5 would be combined in one article to change the
Yep,
line 1 and 1A.
yep,
And then you'll have another article regarding the bylaw.
just the bylaw, yeah. But I'll try to do all three together at town meeting.
And then that's gonna beg the question, what if we make these changes to the use chart and then the town, for whatever reason, doesn't accept the ADU bylaw? And I think the answer is, no, the answer is, our ADU bylaw is intended to be more restrictive than what the state regulations are right now. So if you reject the proposed the proposed town zoning bylaw for ADU,
We'll have to go
you're
fall back
still
on the
subject to
state.
all the state regulations.
Right.
But it really ain't more restrictive.
I'm sorry,
I said it's not really more
Not-
restrictive than the state, not,
not incredibly, no.
I mean,
No,
we added a
Can't be.
special permit.
right, yeah.
The
we
Attorney
added
General's
the-
gonna kick it back.
The little site plan review.
Right,
Let's say this, it's more specific
Right.
than the state
Right.
regulations.
Yeah,
Sounds better than
I mean,
strict.
quite honestly, I think as everybody knows, there's not a lot we're gonna do,
no.
Right.
right? It is my
Well,
intent to
whether
do.
it's local or, to your point, whether it's local or whether it's state, we don't have any choice about compliance.
Yes, you cannot
So you
reject
could-
this,
you
the
could
ADU
reject this
state
if you
law.
want,
Yeah.
but you're still subject to the state statute.
Right,
Right, which just says, if a single-family home is allowed in whatever district, you can put it in,
Yeah.
subject to whatever reasonable restrictions the town may enact. And that's what this bylaw is trying to do, is enact reasonable restrictions, like, well, we'll get into that, but,
Yeah. So
so they,
therein is the answer
I
to,
think
yeah.
the only thing we didn't do was the special permit for an additional one, that the state,
right, it says no, I think.
Right,
Oh, we
the
don't, I
state-
don't think it addresses it at all, and then the state bylaw would kick in. So it would have to be a special permit. I don't think ours addresses, I don't think ours addresses it
doesn't address it at all.
Ours
The
just says
second-
one ADU. can-
One
One
ADU,
ADU,
right,
so then-
right.
The state one is the town can adopt as a
Can allow for
special
more
permit for
if you
more.
wanted to.
Yeah,
We are not
Not
proposing that, nor do I expect any other town will.
Right.
Okay, so just for clarification,
Until the state tells us that you gotta do a special permit.
right.
I just want something clarified. We have the amendments 4 and 5, which are going to be combined on the use.
So they already are, to some extent, that's how I drafted it. They're both on the same use table of use. They ended up being separate amendments, because that's how I
Yeah.
give everybody their own chance, right?
Well, that was the other thing it was going to, that they are still going to be separate amendments, even though they'll be combined on these.
They're being combined at town meeting because they're doing the same thing.
Right.
They're updating the use table for ADU purposes. So I think Liz is being more efficient by making one article out of those I understand why the two separate proposals were submitted, because they were talking about different line items, but it makes sense for the voters to look at it together, because it is, yeah.
So we're gonna make one article out of 4 and 5.
Right, so there are 6 proposed amendments on your list, but there'll be 5 articles, because you're able to combine 2 of them.
Okay, is there any way that the combined wording will be available? Well, it'll be on a town meeting warrant,
I think, actually, she drafted it in the handout.
yeah.
Yep, so I will, tomorrow, I'll make all the changes that you guys voted tonight, or provide the recommendations to the town manager so he can pop those into the warrant,
Yep,
and then that will be ready going forward.
okay.
And I would just note, it seems, I mean, I know you guys will understand it, but on that sheet that you have in front of you, it does not have the previous articles amendment, which is changing line 2 under TC from an SP to a Y, because we just don't know if that's going to get approved. Which it should
Right.
get approved, because it's just a typographical change, but it doesn't show on this example because it has not yet been enacted.
Right.
I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
This to everybody watching at home, and maybe some of us on the board.
Everybody watching at home has probably turned the channel already.
Oh, fell
Is that
asleep.
snoring I hear?
Fell asleep.
So how do we vote? Do we vote to?
So you can vote on 4 and 5 together. You can vote to make an affirmative recommendation to town meeting on both of those, leaving the FW as a special permit, not striking that, not changing it to no, but leaving it as a special permit.
I'll make that motion.
All right.
So Bob made that motion, someone want to second it, please?
Second.
Second, motion made and seconded. All those in favor to recommend these
Aye.
to town meeting?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Which leaves us with 6, 5.
So, yeah, right? And then, so the last one, obviously, is the protected ADU bylaw drafted by the working group. So I would like to take a quick second to thank everybody who participated in that. It was all in their own time, in the middle of the day. But we really appreciate having all the input, being able to get into this now and have something cohesive to go to town meeting with.
They were tremendously well-attended meetings by professionals.
Yep.
I had to miss the second one because I was donating playlists. But I just, the level of discussion, and these meetings went on for a good hour, 2 hours.
Yes, they did.
And I'm glad that all the guys were able to go to it. And so, anyway, not talking about that.
So I got an updated version from town council. You guys, I gave it to you tonight. I don't know if you guys have any changes. There was one suggestion that there's a different definition of floor area, not gross floor area, but floor area that exists in our zoning bylaw. And I didn't know if you wanted to add to the gross floor area definition, the line or any such floor space intended and designed for accessory heating and ventilating equipment. If you wanted to include that in our gross floor area, because we didn't include that in our gross floor area. It's crawl spaces, garage parking areas, attics, enclosed porches, and similar spaces, but we could, exclusions, yes. So we can pop that in there if you
I
want.
like the idea of including that,
Okay.
yes.
Of excluding utility.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, excluding the utility as the floor space intended design for accessory healing.
Okay.
We can put utility. Okay, so that's,
Subsection G,
yes.
curious about the choice.
Oh, wait, a minute, I'm sorry, one under definitions, that's where that is. Under gross floor area, which defines it, the sum of all areas of all stories of the building of compliant ceiling height, including basements, lofts, and intermediate floors measured from the interior faces of exterior walls. But excluding crawl spaces, garage parking areas, attics, enclosed porches, we'll add the utility spaces after that, and then similar spaces.
thank you for creating this clean copy of this.
That's right.
Much appreciated.
Subsection G, about the lighting, I'm just curious where that wording came from.
That came from town council.
Okay.
I think we all tried to, very much, town council tried to strike a balance between not making excessively restrictive so it can get through
Yeah.
the process at the state level. Like, we could have said night sky, but I'm not sure that that will be feasible. I mean, it should, right, for an ADU, you should just really have like an outside light on, right?
I guess that was my question, is why not just say, shall abide by
Residential
Existing.
lighting.
rules already in place?
Right, I think this is very clear that you can't have a spotlight
Yeah.
as your outside light, and that it casts onto other people's property.
As somebody recently tried to do on Bedford Street.
Yeah, not done, right? So that's, and same with an upper story balcony or roof deck, they're supposed to make it not facing adjacent properties, but facing the primary dwelling, if you have either of those.
Mr. Riley?
Okay, just two minor edits. On page 1, right in the middle of the page, under subsection B, where it says it's not larger than gross floor area, than half of the gross floor area, ... If we could change the half to 50%, because later in the bylaw, it uses the same 50%, just to be consistent, and I think it's frankly easier to read when you start getting small print. Where did I see the other 50%? Well, it's in here. Oh, on page 2 and number 3, it talks about 50% of the gross floor area. And then also, on the third page of the handout,
Yeah, I'm sorry, Sean. So,
I'm sorry. So on page 1, right in the middle of the page, under 1A, no, sorry, 1B,
I see it.
it,
Yep.
It has, yeah, instead of spelling out the word half, it has the numerical sign for half. I'm suggesting to use the 50%.
Yeah.
50 with the percent.
Yeah.
Because that,
What it says me, the says, yeah.
yeah, because then it matches what appears later in the bylaw, just to be consistent. And then I would suggest, there was discussion during that working group about if you're gonna build a new detached building, which is an ADU, that requires a limited site plan review, and one of the things that we anticipated might come up between neighbors was privacy and screening and such. So I would just suggest a small adjustment to wording here. On the third page, under section F, it says the plan shall include all proposed buffers, screening, and landscaping along with designated areas for trash and recycling storage. Any parking or outdoor storage areas which are associated with a detached protected use ADU that are within 15 feet of the property line of an abutting residential use shall include either a fence or a minimum 6-foot-high vegetated buffer as screening from adjacent properties unless waived by the planning board. Two minor picayune things. One is where it says that are within 15 feet of the property line of an abutting residential use, delete that comma, no need for it. And then instead of saying shall include either a fence or a minimum 6-foot-high vegetated buffer, I think it should say
A 6-foot fence.
shall
or
include,
6 foot, or 6-foot fence or vegetative buffer, right?
shall include either a minimum 6-foot-high solid fence or a vegetated buffer, which is consistent with other language in our zoning bylaw. To make it clear that putting up a chain link fence or a fence you can see through is not going to do the job. It has to be a solid fence. And then it also says, unless waived by the planning board. So when you guys look at the site plan, you may find that there's no need for a fence in this particular location or whatnot.
That's a good clarification, because lots of times fence issues come up, we always have, the desire to have a proper fence as opposed to just a chain link fence or something.
Yeah. And I think this is it protects the right in certain circumstances for a property owner to file for an application for an ADU and an accessory dwelling unit, but it But if it's a new structure, or if it's an addition to an existing house that will expand the footprint, that triggers the requirement for a site plan review, limited site plan review, we're calling it, by which you have to send mailed notice to the neighbors so they can look at the plans and offer their concerns and see if they can be addressed.
They don't have to advertise them though, so I don't know if, it cites the law, but they don't
Right.
have to advertise in the newspaper, which is nice, because that's an expensive.
That can cost between $300 to $500 for advertising in the enterprise, of which,
Nobody reads.
yes, it's not very effective anymore, but it's what the state law requires for normal zoning procedures.
For now,
What's that?
for now.
Yes. Wow.
It's crazy, you know, I read the Patriot Ledger, I read those legal notices.
I'm sure you do, Bruce.
I do. I read everything.
And town council also waived the, that timeline at the bottom in section J. That if the plan is really poorly drafted and you guys can't really do anything with it, it allows them to go back and kind of reset the clock, and you can grant a waiver as long as the applicant asks for it.
I'm just pleased that the amount of effort, there's been a lot of effort, a lot of thoughtful discussion. There's been a lot of work on this. And I just hope town meeting floor
There were a lot more
accepts it.
comments than I expected.
Yeah,
It was
Yeah.
interesting.
it was, I'm very happy that I was able to take part in it. And I really appreciate the participation of you guys too, and all the other town boards.
So we need a motion to
Recommend.
recommend this town meeting.
As amended tonight.
Yep. As amended.
So moved.
The motion's been made, seconded? Seconded. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you.
I will get everybody the same copies of these that I send for the warrant with your recommendations on them.
We just have a few more items to
Yep.
discuss. Okay, did everybody get a chance to look at the zoning board of appeals agenda?
Yep.
I did, let me just take another quick peek.
Any comments, questions?
380 Brockton Avenue, that was before us a long time ago.
Was, so the board approved a site plan and I believe a special permit on lot coverage. I'm not, don't quote me on that second part, but definitely the site plan for 4 units. The gentleman's been in the office several times. He talked about adding 2 more units. 2 more on the top. I did tell him that would require some parking revamp and water. So that he needed to go talk to water first before he, so I'm not sure what the special permit here is, except that his expired for the all residential use.
That's
So
what I
I'm
was
not
wondering, is-
sure if he's going back just for the 4 or the 6. I don't have a copy of the petition. But that was his general conversation with us in the office. I think he's going to stay with the 4. I think in order to get the project up and running and going, the 4 will be what he needs. He knows he needs to come back to the planning board. He needs a Mass dot curb cut. There were a bunch of things. He's got a copy of the decision letter, so he knows.
If I remember correctly, this was approved during a previous administration at the Conservation Commission. I mean, that's how long ago it was.
Maybe it will depend on how long. And if
didn't
he's
know-
adding parking, it does, I think it would bump into,
This was really tight what they were trying to do, and there was remediation involved. I mean, I don't know, it was really tight.
right.
I don't know, do they have to go back through conservation again? Because it's been so long?
If they don't change anything and their approval still stands, I'm not sure what those timeframes are for the Conservation Commission, then they would be okay. If they're expanding it or their approval has expired, then they would have to go back.
Okay.
Yeah.
One other thing I want to bring up before we adjourn. Rick Collins, you asked me to reach out to my friend Stephanie Danielson over in Easton as far as economic development. It was nice catching up with Stephanie. She's a nice lady and very talented at what she does. And so are our town planners. But I gave that to Kevin. Kevin, could you pass it over? Okay. Whoops, sorry.
Steal that back
Yeah.
from you. Thank you.
Stephanie referred me, I'll pass this down to you. But on their website, they have Town of Easton actually has an Economic Development Council. And, they have the book, How to Do Business in Easton. They have all kinds of things in here. And they've also got the mission of the thing. It's actually a committee of several people. And it spells out the advantages of Easton event. And Liz, you said that we have something like that buried on our website?
Not buried. It's carefully hidden at the moment. So I would like to say that Kevin has been working on this for multiple months now. He may have
That's where it's
used
hidden.
Easton, that's why it's hidden. He may have used Easton as a template.
What's wrong with that? Imitation-
Sense in reinventing the wheel.
imitation is
The
the sincerest
website
form of
is
flattery.
up. He's still working on putting stuff there. He's just finished or nearly finished. We have to go out and actually do drive-bys of vacant property because what the assessors have it as a status, like we've done it, we can do here. From my brain, his brain. So we're going to take the rest of the addresses and go through that. But when that's done, we'll have a list of vacant properties. We have that business, Welcome to Abington Doing Business. I've sent that out to the relative departments that are in it. They sent me back their changes. That's ready to go up. The town manager wrote a new welcome letter. So Kevin's really done a lot of work on that. And it's hidden because it's not complete yet. So there'll be a grand unveiling maybe with the spring.
Well, I've said this before, but I really think we should change the title of the planning office to the Office of Planning and Economic Development, given the fact that Kevin's done a lot of great work on this too. So
He has.
if you're watching this, Mr. Town Manager, Town Administrator, you have the chair of the planning board support on this issue.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, do we have anything else we need to talk about tonight?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, motion made, seconded.
Second?
Second.
All those in
Third.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone, for watching us, and have a good day.